Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. This is your podcast host, Steve Ramona, and I've got a very unique guest. He does incredible things. You're going to learn a lot if you have any messaging situations, Facebook, LinkedIn, social media, blogs, email, across the board. Your message is the most important thing, and my guest is going to show you and tell you how to fix that. Dean, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you?
Great. I'm so excited because you just helped me in the green room a little bit with your messaging. And that's how your marketing should be. It starts with messaging, right? Let's talk about old school copywriting.
Old school copywriting. It's like you spend all day thinking about how you would replicate a first kiss for someone that you've never met as a reader, which is to say, you're always trying to do 90% of the feeling and thinking that reader or listener or viewer would have to do. You're doing the 90% for them, and they only have to do the last 10%, like in a first kiss where you lean in 90% of the way. And then the only decision the other person has to make is, am I okay covering this last little bit of distance and sealing the deal?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say a lot of very common when I show up to the workshop that I run for folks about sort of figuring out for companies to figure out their angle is that we show up in these, their assumption is I know what the client know what to say. And so it's, I know what I want to say. Dean's going to help me find the best way to say it. And I tell them up front, this is not our job today. And that's not what you want to do. We want to find out or figure out what that person would be interested in, and then work backwards to how we would talk to them. And then from there, I'm going to cherry pick probably just one thing of the list you want to say. And that's what we're going to tell them first, because you can only tell them one thing first. But we don't start with what you want to say to somebody and then figure out how to get them to pay attention to it. You figure out what they would pay attention to and then work backwards to put your thing. Or the way I tell it to clients is we need to tell them their story with you in it. We're not trying to get them to sit still while you talk about yourself. We don't have a lot of patience, none of us do, for listening to strangers talk to themselves, talk about themselves to us. But we have quite a lot of attention for strangers who want to talk to us about us. Like, yeah, tell me more about me. That's great. And so that's what you're trying to do. That's old school copywriting.
I love that because America's speed. It's all about fast. DoorDash,
Yeah.
Everything we want quicker, want it yesterday. And you're right. What's the attention span? What's that? There's 30 seconds. What is that? 7 seconds?
See, people who complain about short attention spans don't want to put in the work to do 90% of the thinking and feeling for the reader. Let's look at it this way, okay? You go through a McDonald's drive-through, the ultimate inconvenience, right? And very, very quickly, you're moving through the line. Very quickly, they have the food ready. By the time you get to the window, you're done. You're out of there, right? An enormous amount of work, going back days and weeks, went into all of the ingredients and all the prep and the trucking and heating and everything that went into that, so that your experience is just a few minutes, whereas they did 99% of all of the other work involved in that transaction.
A great story. Yeah.
So McDonald's doesn't care about your attention span. They're doing most of the work anyway.
So you're different than copywriters because you call yourself old school. Explain that difference, what you do.
So if you took a bunch of school buses and drove around whatever city you're in, and you randomly kidnapped, don't do this, but if you randomly kidnapped 100 copywriters, 95 of those 100, y'all, put them all into a high school gym. 95 out of those 100 are content marketing writers, which is, an absolutely necessary job. A lot of businesses need a lot of words written. And so, but content marketing people, content marketing writers, they write blog posts, they write maybe short articles, like social media posts, right? They get to assume. And then the other like 4 or 5 people, they tend to write either specialty stuff or premiums. Anytime you've ever gone to a website and given away your email address to be able to download something or look at something, whatever you got or downloaded, that's a premium: PDF, ebook, white paper, use cases, whatever. I mostly do B2B, so it's that tends to be stuff. And then there's like one guy in the corner, and that's me. And like everyone else gets to assume, all those other writers get to assume that anyone reading their stuff is interested in either the company or the topic that's being written about. And the old school guy doesn't get to assume any interest from any stranger and has to spark it. So I'm the guy that sparks the initial interest and sort of draws the reader or prospect into the client's world. And then they'll explore, read the blog and look at different pages on the website and that kind of stuff. So I'm like the first guy.
Yeah.
And then that's what you still need old school people for that, apparently. And then everything else after, all of the mass amount of content by like loads of some very, very talented, definitely prodigious writers. They get to at least make assumptions about interest, and I have to create that interest.
I like spark because you're right. That's the first thing. If you don't have a spark, you can have the best content in the world, but if they have no interest, goes right over the top of their head.
Yeah.
What?
And, I mean, it's a lot easier to convey your point in 500 words than in 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have very limited real estate.
What's one of the things that,
in.
yeah, what's one of the things that people do wrong in copyright messaging?
Oh, anybody can, anytime I meet anyone, even casually on a Zoom call, I'll go ahead and ask them for their website address. Two things always happen. First, everyone will tell you, yeah, but don't like judge me on my website. I don't really like my website. We're about to make changes to it's almost a truism. Everyone hates their own website and is just around the corner from revamping the whole thing. Sure, whatever, go for it. But I don't really care about that. I look at the the copy, right, which in my world is called copy, to everyone else's words. And you can imagine that there's 3 layers of messaging, 3 levels. 99% of all of the websites you'll ever see are down on level 1, which is informational. If informational had a slogan, it would be, here's who we are and what we do. Right? We're Acme. Here's who Acme is and what Acme sells. Fair enough, right? Except that's great for the entire rest of your website, except your homepage. Your homepage is different. It's like the cover of a book or cover of a magazine. And so one layer up from that, if you're B2B, one layer up from informational is aspirational, and you're flipping the focus. So you're not saying we're Acme, here's who we are and what we sell. We're saying you could be different, or you could be better. Right? So now it's about the reader and what they want and their sort of negative present. If the present wasn't negative, there's no problem to solve. So we only ever deal in negative presents. And there's a positive future. And you're talking to them about either their negative present or their a potential positive future, or both. And there's one layer above that you don't normally get for B2B, but you'll see in different types of B2C kind of messaging. And that's from informational to aspirational to transformational. So from you could be better or different to you could be new. And anyone who's ever sold to businesses knows you can't go to a business and say, you could be new. Like, we could strip this whole company down to the studs and work on rebuilding it, and no one is going to sign up for that. The risk is enormous. No one's going to sign up. You could get it by a bus tomorrow, and all I have is studs. So no. But for fitness, beauty, health, investing, all these kind of like areas of B2C, you could be new can be a very powerful messaging. The only, an example, the only you could be new messaging that's currently sort of powerful in B2B, so the only transformational thing you can use from B2B, it tends to be around AI, because it's such a disruptive force, right? It is the equivalent for copywriting and messaging and old school copywriting to what the internet was in the 90s. Like, you're a business, but you're not an internet business, and you're going to become an internet business. Like, you're going to be a different company. You're going to be a new company by the time we're done. That kind of stuff. You're not going to be, what was that place called? You're not going to be Borders. You're going to be Amazon. Remember Borders?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you're not going to be Borders. You're going to be Amazon.
Yeah. And that's
back when Amazon only sold books and CDs.
Right. So you open the door to AI, which I was thinking about talking about. What's
sure. You can't have a copywriting conversation without AI.
Exactly. And people are always learning. And what's your take and what's your thoughts on AI?
Right. I've spent the last, I want to say 17, 18 weeks now. I got my first paid AI services subscription type stuff back in December, January. But I've spent the last almost 4.5 months now working with one particular one that lets me upload a massive amount. I haven't even found a limit yet. A massive amount of like completed writing. Of course, someone like me, I mean, I probably have 1 million words written, right? So I have a lot to choose from, but it lets me upload all of that stuff. I'm currently experimenting with about 150,000 words of finished copywriting product scripts, sales pages, cold emails, website, homepages, that kind of stuff. And, booklets and white papers, that I write for my company. I don't usually write them for other companies, but I write them for mine. And I'm able to, over time, it's really like trying to teach someone to draw when you can see what they draw, but they can't see really what you're doing, and you're talking on a phone. But over the last, it's been amazing, the progress. So I uploaded all my stuff and say, look at this here. This is examples of how I write, especially longer form stuff, right? AI is completely useless on great headlines. They're all so generic and bland. Literally anybody could have written them 20 years ago. But for more like hardcore stuff, I'm able to teach it my style. And I can even query it and say, like, tell me about what you know about my writing style right now. And it will give me a pretty good summary. And right now it's writing drafts for longer form stuff that I wouldn't normally take on as a project anymore, because, there's just, honestly, nobody needs Dean Waye to write a blog post. Go to Fiverr or Upwork. There's 1 million dudes that'll do that for you, right? And so, but someone like me, you'd have a hard time finding on Upwork. And so I'm able to, for existing clients, write some stuff for them. And honestly, it looks like a draft of what I would have written 4 years ago, which is pretty amazing, but it's my style. But it'll be at least another couple of years before I've worked out the kinks on it. But AI for long form stuff or medium length stuff, it's getting pretty good if you're willing as a writer to teach it and mentor it every day.
Great advice, because that's what I need people to hear, because people are falling, hey, I'm going to do AI. It's going to do everything for me. And let me ask you, I just had a conversation this week. It's like so when you do the AI, you don't just take that and run with it. It's
virtually never usable.
Yeah. Thank you.
Or to put it another way, if I wasn't being paid to write, I was just needed to churn out something for my business, my own, if I owned a plumbing company or whatever, I might get away with using a paid good AI service. I mean, I wouldn't use the free version of ChatGPT, but with a paid version of ChatGPT, it could be pretty good. But no, nobody pays someone like me to have generic AI content generated, So no, I can't take anything that it gives me. But it means that I don't really have any, this is terrible to say, I don't really have any junior writers that I work with anymore. So I used to work with a handful of junior writers around the world. And the AI is just as good at generating a relatively generic, bland first draft of something. And that's pretty much all I was using those guys for anyway.
And first draft's the important word there, and starting point. It's not the finish point, but it's a way to get started, to get the juices flowing in your head. This is great. But I can expand upon it. And then you can use ChatGPT to keep up leveling your messaging, right? Okay.
Yeah, I use a service called Mem instead of, I have like 5 paid services right now, but Mem.ai, they have a paid service that I think they accidentally stumbled into the AI field. I don't think they built a product, and I don't think they realized what people like me were going to use it for.
Yeah.
Because it's a product for keeping notes. It's like writing notes and meeting notes and your own sort of notes to yourself and drafts and stuff. And it's even in the free version, its selling point was you never needed to have folders. You never needed to do tagging or hashtags. The AI built in would do all that for you. So you didn't have to do any organization. And every time you were typing something, you'd see on the right-hand side, here are the other notes that are related to that you wrote a note 7 months ago that's kind of similar to this, and you might want to look at it. That was great. But then they added a paid service. And then people like me realized, if it's already reading everything that I wrote, I could upload a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have necessarily made a note about and train that AI agent in how I like to write stuff. And I know I'm not the only person who came up with this, because eventually, like, even Mem sends out its newsletter and is starting to talk about how people are using it that way. Yeah. But it is, as far as I know, the only quote unquote dedicated AI agent for an individual.
Yeah, that's
literally anybody powerful. Can have for $10 a month.
Oh, that's worth it. What's the website? Let's give them some
mem.ai.
Perfect. Awesome. There you go, listeners. That's why I had Dean on the show. Free plug, but it's also servant. A servant gives out freemium, gives out, here's some stuff we can do. So with copy/words,
Right.
how important is that for a business, whether you're a solopreneur or you're Apple?
So in its realm, I mean, video's never been more popular, right? There's a reason that you and I are talking right now on Zoom instead of having a, just a transcript of a phone call that people would read. And I write a lot of scripting for video. Video is its own challenge in that you need to really grab someone's attention in just a second or two. It used to be you'd have like 15 seconds, then you'd have about 8, and now you have about 1.5 to 2. Right, the very first syllables out of your mouth need to be kind of interesting, or if you're going to put it on YouTube or Instagram or something, or people will just go past it. And so, but in everything that we do, the writing is the core of it, even if people don't think of it as writing. Right, you don't think of YouTube as being full of words, but YouTube's absolutely full of words. It's all full of words. Very rarely does a picture or a silent video or a video with just music hold a large audience's attention for very long.
Right.
Either something's got to be on the screen, words have to be on the screen, or someone has to be saying them. One way or the other, the words are there. I do find that I do a lot of work with a company called Best Damn Webinar Company, where we write and produce webinars for mostly technology companies. And more, they need to be scripted. Right? Not scripted in the way so they sound like someone's reading something. They have to be written so it sounds like nothing's been written. It has to sound natural and extemporaneous, but it's written. So you're in a B2B, kind of webinar as an audience member, and it sounds like they're just doing their thing. But at least one of those people, and probably all of them, are scripted.
Yeah.
For maximum effect. And that's one of the reasons why you see business webinars are getting shorter and shorter as well. 30 minutes is the typical length these days.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I love you saying about YouTube.
Condense more into it.
Right. And the YouTube, you're right. My title's got words. My description's got words.
Yeah.
We're speaking words.
Yeah.
It's
I don't know if
unique.
you know this, but if you're ever watching YouTube on a like on a laptop or desktop, you can just hit the letter C, and the captions will come up.
Yeah, I put subtitles anyways.
Yeah.
And that's again, and see, listen, that's unique to think about. Oh, I just do videos. I don't need copyright. You absolutely need Dean or whoever you're going to work with to do that. Who do you work with particularly? So
about half of my business are tech, like STEM kind of companies, engineering heavy, tech companies, science heavy kind of company. Basically, they make something complicated and they need to convey something very quickly to a prospect, but it's not a question of simplifying what they do, because honestly a lot of people can do that, and it's useful skill, but you need to make within just a few seconds, no matter how complicated your tech is, and a lot of them are SAS firms or whatever, right, or fintech or whatever, you need to make that reader, that stranger, feel like you understand them and their situation and their life, and then they'll very quickly make a decision whether you're worth the emotional or attention or time investment to try to understand you in turn.
Yeah.
And so the webinar, the live scripting, the stuff I write for live audiences, most of that is on the webinar side for STEM companies. And then the rest of the business tends to be fractional chief marketing officers. Like very specifically. And I went after, I targeted them as my market about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And the thing about fractional chief marketing officers, they're always finding new customers, new projects. And so what they'll often do is I try to let as many of them know as possible that I exist and specifically what I do, because I'm usually brought in the first like 60 to 90 days of a year-long engagement when they want to put some kind of progress, visible quality progress up. I want to put a win on the board fast. Before the client gets antsy, because a lot of stuff that a fractional chief marketing officer would do is, it might take several quarters or a year before you finally see, especially before you can see a year-over-year difference, right? But they want to put something, so they'll bring me in to figure out a messaging sort of angle and maybe rewrite a homepage for them, or write email sequences for them, cold email or warm email or whatever, or get a keynote written for the CEO or something like that. something where they can show in the first 90 days they've made very solid progress.
That's fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
let's, and I want people to go out there because I'm sure you'll help them if they're a solopreneur and that's not what you work with, because I know other copywriters to do referrals for. But let's do a shout out because you've given us a lot of words, a lot of copy here that people are going to chew on. How can they find you?
My portfolio, it's only in the last month that I've even gotten around to making a portfolio after all these years. It's winstonwrites.com.
Winston
W-R-I. Writes. Winston Writes. That's because my first name is technically Winston. I didn't know that until my first day of kindergarten, it turns out. My parents, when I was born, my dad's name is Winston, and he's never liked the name. And so he said, we can call him whatever you want, but I don't name him after me. Nobody should be named Winston and have to grow up with that name. I mean, a lot of people like that name, but he doesn't like it. And the story goes, when he left the room, the hospital room, she had the birth certificate. She wrote in Winston at the beginning. But the agreement they had after that was, okay, but we're never going to call him Winston. So my middle name is Dean. And I was Dean, obviously, my whole life. But my first day of kindergarten, they're doing roll call. Like first day in school, first day ever in school. And, my last name begins with W. So obviously I'm at the end. There are almost no kids left, right, to call on. And someone, I hear my dad's name and I'm like, there's a kid here with my dad's name? That's wow. And the teacher's looking straight at me like, are you Winston? I said, no. And he said, is that your name? He said, that's my father's name. And he said, that's your name. And he checked me. And I went home and said, why is my name Winston?
Oh, that's funny.
I honestly had no idea for 5 years what my name was.
Well, I won't call you Winston. We'll call you Dean.
There you go.
I
Winston Writes, because it's got some nice alliteration. That's the website.
Right. And I'm going to do, I want to do this because I love your messaging, how important it is, because I know a lot of social media and direct digital marketers that need help with messaging. They can do content, know where to put it, but sometimes the messaging misses the point. I'm going to offer the first 5 people that reach out to you a $20 Amazon gift card.
Cool.
So if they mention the podcast by name, listeners, he'll just send me your info. Hey, he'll let me know and I'll send you instantly. I did 3 this week and people were blown away. People ask me why. I say, because sometimes it takes that literal reward to push you over to message Dean, and Dean will make a difference. In the ROI in messaging is infinite to me, because you don't know if it's going to be two times, 10 times, but it will grow and teach you more about your business, which a lot of people, I think, miss the boat.
What a lot of customers, a lot of my clients will, what I'll tell them, and it's been borne out year over year, is that they will rarely, if ever, call me back for another project to, for instance, rewrite their tagline or slogan or rewrite their core headline. Once it's written, it should last for many, many years. And that's kind of the point of it, right? It's not disposable words. It's supposed to be, I write the durable stuff. That's my job.
Yeah, and that's a great message right there. It's durable is a key, because you shouldn't be spending money every year on copywriters unless you change your business, and that's a whole.
That's the only time it ever happens. Is we've changed our focus, we've pivoted, and so now we need to start over. And I said, okay, let's do it again.
Well, we're running out of time, but I'd love to have you back, because I want to get updates on your AI and different things that you're doing. And I'm sure people are going to reach out to you. And I want to thank you for being on, because I love this subject.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a blast. And now I'm not going to call you Winston, but I'll keep that in the back of my mind. So with that being said, what's one tip you can leave the audience? You've been through a lot in your life and seen a lot of businesses, but what could help them? What's the one tip that can help them?
So I'm usually brought in sort of at the beginning for a fractional CMO, but even then they've gone to a fractional CMO because they're at the end of some big effort where no matter how hard they push, the wall doesn't move, right? Or the rock doesn't move. And so when I brought in, one of the things that we do in our little divot is to understand that I tell them assumptions matter, because literally everything is built on them. And if you're pushing really hard, you're putting in the effort, you're putting in the resources, and nothing's happening for you, I guarantee you that you're using someone else's assumption, which is based on something kind of fundamental, and that thing isn't there anymore. It fell away, it broke, it's not true anymore. The thing that other people built on top of it is still holding, and you're standing on top of that. But if you go like just start working backwards, okay, people don't do it because of this, and then well, why won't they do that? Because they do that. You get back, and a lot of people do these sort of 5 why kind of exercises. Generally, I find you only need about 3, but 5's great. But you will find that 1 or more assumptions that everything else was built on is no longer true, and that's not a bad thing. That's an opportunity. Because if something's fundamentally broken in there, or an assumption is no longer true, you have a head start on messaging or a mechanism that most of your competitors don't know about yet. And so if you just don't assume that X matters, and if you just throw money at it or push hard, it's going to work. If it's not working for you, chances are there's an assumption broken somewhere. And if you go back a tiny bit, you'll see, oh, well, actually, like our customers all pivoted to this 2.5 years ago because this other company made something that made it cost effective to do it this way now. And so we still think that they want to put in a bunch of money and effort and time to do it. And we're building on that. And turns out they're not there anymore. They moved and they're doing this thing. So assumptions matter. Everything is built on them. And 1 or more of them is usually broken. You just don't look yet.